Welcome to Expedition Self on OMTimes Radio with lifelong learner, entrepreneur, and creator of the worlds of Expedition Self, Sam Parrotto. Sam shares 4 decades of studying, guiding, and teaching how to go inside so we can build an incredibly powerful, dynamic, and validating relationship with the self. Expedition Self is laced with stellar, unexpected insights about what it means to be human. Listen now and ignite your self-development process with Sam Parrotto.
Well, hello, I'm Sam Parrotto, and you have landed on Expedition Self. Today, our subject is love, and it's a great subject. But I want to say that I'm probably going to take a little bit different angle on it than the traditional one, because I'm going to share the contents of a mini book I wrote years ago about love. One morning at about 5 a.m., I got up, really for no good reason. I just couldn't sleep anymore and had to write. I think it came to me because I was watching so many of my clients and the people that I knew be embroiled in unloving interactions, and it dawned on me that if we could have a different perspective inside of those relationships that have love in them, that we'd be able to bring a more creative and an understanding quality to it. You know, I believe we court this overarching relationship with love throughout our entire lifetime, and it's both really complex and simple all at the same time. It's as easy as generosity or kindness or extending interest in someone, or it's as complex as every single conflict found around the world. I feel like we covet moments when the feeling of love is palpable for us, and we're struck in awe when love seems to conquer insensitivity or selfishness. You know, we're moved to tears when we see love rise above pain, and we back away in self-protection when we encounter what we consider as unloving acts that are directed towards us. So at any moment during the show today, I'd really love to hear your take on what you think love is, or how you've come to understanding the role and the meaning of love in your own life. I'm also going to provide some prompts, so if you have a pen and paper handy, you may want to capture those as I share them. You know, learning about love is this lifelong endeavor, and I dare say that this constant collecting of data about love is shared universally by all of us. So I'm hopeful that you'll come away today from today's show with a new way to think about love and you and how to experience it, and that you'll see it as part of how to more deeply go inside. So, okay. Here's the phone number, so you write it down, so when you're ready to call, it's 202-570-7057. So let's dive in. By our very existence, we are proof of love. Think about it. Love must be present to create anything, or why would it get formed in the first place? We'd simply leave it as nothing. Right? The shaping of anything. It's the intrinsic byproduct of love in action. It's the intention to birth, to bring anything into being, to cause it, to manifest it. It's like the original motivating state. We're created through our bodies and through the act of being in life. So I'm suggesting that we're therefore designed through the act of creating, which I am also linking to the idea of love. Our very existence is evidence and confirmation of this love. Now, I'm not talking about the idea through the lens of religion. I actually landed here as I worked to create and build a relationship with myself by going inside over the years. I stumbled upon the realization that for me to exist, then I must also be loved, no matter how I played it, no matter how it went. Can you imagine seeing yourself through this lens, that because you are you are love, and that you get to feel the awe and wonder of that? So I'm wanting you to consider that there's this ever-present state of love at work through you that is substantiated and verified because you are you. I know it's deep. And your brain's probably saying, wait a minute, what is she doing? This isn't what I thought. So I'm saying love is because you are. And the idea that love is present or not present is really not love, but rather the feeling we've associated with love. That's a big jump, right? We're saying the feelings associated with love, we're not connecting to this idea that we are love. And this is what we're going to explore today. So love finds expression as we breathe our most vital selves into the world. Our breath helps the self flow, right? Our uniqueness, it's comprised of thoughts and feelings and dreams, creativity and actions, and it all uses breath as the bridge to bring it into real life, because that's what keeps us walking on our feet, moving around the planet. You know, we can be more vital when we recognize that each exchange of an in-breath and an out-breath is in essence an interactive learning process for the self. It's a way to practice expressing all of our uniqueness, which is, I'm suggesting, love at work. You see, the more we have a desire to experiment and play and share ourselves with the outer world, the more we'll discover that energy and liveliness and vigor that breath, whole breath, conscious breath makes possible. You see, this vitality is the thing that I think we give up on first, particularly as we age. It's the place where the minute life gets real, we then experience the weight of our effort, of trying, of needing to prove our worth, of surviving. But if we circle back around to the idea that we are love simply because we're alive, then there's no reason to block or inhibit the life force that's attached to each and every sigh and exhalation. And I find myself wanting to go, think of it like this. Vitality rides in on the Trojan horse of the most simple human of acts, which is to breathe. And imagine empowering each breath with the knowledge that you are love and that vitality is being delivered and replenished with each inhale and exhale. So as we talk, I'm going to keep layering one idea on top of the next. Hopefully it'll all form into a really cool set of ideas or feelings that you get to play with after the show. So whether our expression is seen as something we deem as loving is not what matters, even though we think it does. We spend so much time defining, labeling, categorizing, setting parameters of love. We tend to forget that these identifiers were originally created by our mind as a way to grasp this incredibly large idea of love. But this is what actually began the forgetting. In our attempt to understand the meaning of our existence, to make sense of the drama of relationships and life, we began to connect words and ideas with feelings. And as we make these connections, we begin to move away from knowing we're love, and instead, we use these real life experiences as a way of defining love for ourselves. So then, real experience holds the authority over whether we deem something as loving or not, right? It becomes very practical and tangible to us. So this is what I'm saying. If we take the case that we're love, then the actual experience of what we define as love, it wouldn't carry so much command over how we're going to show up and give of ourselves and what we're going to take away from the events and circumstances of our life, what we're going to conclude about them. We're going to begin to give ourselves and others more room to be human because we're not labeling and judging and concluding that our actions or their actions are unloving. If we are to return to this idea that our expression is simply being in life and sharing our uniqueness through breath, then we must see that our definition of love and being loving is not only limiting, but it narrows the playing field where we can operate, experiment, learn, and truly give of ourselves. So what words do you use to define love? How do you try to be loving? And how is your definition and all that effort limiting to the idea of love as you being just you? So this idea of love that's at play simply because we are, it kind of like it pulses relentlessly, right? It compels us to think and feel, to find experiences that help us learn about who we are and, to gain skills to affect how life goes for us. We are truly in a partnership with this idea of love that happened when we happened. I thought that was really fun when I wrote that, right? It happened, love happened when we happened. So just as our heart beats, pushing that breath outward, our need to create, to share, to engage, it drives like all of our effort in life. So if we can understand better that our need is being driven by knowing that it's the source of who we are is love, we're going to have more access to this infinite supply of energy and creativity that lies inside, waiting to be tapped. And this need is made like much more secure knowing that its source is love, our need to express, even when it becomes like distorted by our mind's attempt to use our output to make ourselves feel valuable or worthy. And that's where this little line goes. I just want to stop for a second. There's a line in here because it's like we actually try so hard, right? We try to find love. We try to be loving. We try to do all of this because we want to have a sense of being valued and worthy, and we want to be wanted. And somewhere in there, there's a distortion that happens. See, when we attach the idea of love to our actuality, then like our actual being, then we begin to recognize that there are two levels to being human and working with love. One of them is this innate knowing and understanding about what we're really all about. And the other is the working out our human experience, which includes the trying to prove to ourselves all the time that we're capable and we're valuable and we're worthy and we're acceptable. And then the working that out, it's really the point of the human schoolroom. But it's actually a heck of a lot easier if you recognize that all the love you're seeking, you already possess. Now you just have to learn how to work with it and practice with it and experience life through it. So here's a good one. Love is not positive or negative. It just is. But it definitely feels positive or negative, doesn't it? Right? In that feeling space. This is confusing for us. Like, how do we separate this knowing about love, that we are it, because we are here, because we happened, from the feeling of love? Well, I'm suggesting that there's a need to think differently about love so that we can actually experience more of it. And I mean, experience it like tangibly, where we know we're walking in it and we know we're experiencing it. We've got to champion and advocate for love in its most unvarnished and original state. Because if we continue to only see our human understanding of love, if we allow the intellect to trap our understanding of love inside of only that which we feel, believe it or not, we're actually missing it largely in the presence of our lives. Does that make sense? That we don't even realize it, but by limiting it and narrowing it and boxing it into what it feels like, we actually miss its existence beyond that. We only see it in the moment where someone is unselfish on behalf of another person in an acute way. And we miss the evidence of people loving us simply because it doesn't always feel like love. So if you think of someone who doesn't feel loving, consider that their love is not positive or negative, and see what you can notice about their journey and about the idea that they're trying to grow, they're trying to evolve just like you are. See, I know this is going to sound a little corny, we are love offered to the world every day, right? So we return to this idea of our presence, us having been the outcome of creating, as like love in form. Then think of yourself as an offering, one where the value of your presence requires absolutely no justification, right? You belong. And with each breath, you're giving that presence to the people and the rhythm of the planet. So when we come back from break, we're going to talk about the idea that it really requires no effort to love, because it's already an essential element of our vital life force. All we have to do is be with our whole selves and remember.
A conscious lifestyle for a mindful life. OMTimes Radio. IOM-FM.
OMTimes magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organisation, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Connect at omtimes.com. OMTimes, creating a more conscious lifestyle.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
Coping-19, brought to you by CDC and the Ad Council.
If you're feeling increasingly lonely right now, you're not alone. It's totally normal. Even though we may not be able to get together in person, connecting virtually with friends and family still gives you a chance to interact with people and may help raise your spirits. Join a virtual book club, set up group text chats, or online video coffee breaks with coworkers.
Find more self-care and coping tips at coping-19.org.
Hi, I'm Sam Parrotto, and you are listening to Expedition Self. Our topic today is love, and in the first 20 minutes, we talked a lot about this idea that knowing that we are love, just because we exist, just because we're born, that we're part of being created to being alive, is different than this idea of something feeling loving, and that we get that confused. And when we get that confused, we have a tendency to narrow and limit the magnitude of what life can actually feel like and what we can bring to it. So before break, I want to also give this phone number, 202-570-7057. And I want to encourage you to call in, even if you don't comment on what I'm actually saying, but you just share your own viewpoint about love. Like anything is okay, right? So this idea that it doesn't require any effort to love because it's already an essential element of our vital life force, I think that's a part that we don't really quite get. Because if we really walk expressing and sharing through breath and through our creativity, we don't have to try at it, but we still push and work, right, to love others in the world when it may not really be necessary. Our behavior may not appear to be loving, but if we're able to remember that we are loved simply because we exist here and now, then every action we take, every moment when we're caught in an unexpected situation, and all the learning of our life, even that emotionally painful stuff, it's love at work in our lives. So can you see that it's actually happening whether you're trying at it or not? Certainly the struggle we engage in is working our way through the learning about it. I oftentimes think that trying to be loving It emerges out of our sense of not being enough, or not being sure we're wanted, or not being able to be honest about what's really happening inside, so we have to put something else on top. You know, I don't know, for some reason, every time I get to this spot and I think about what I'm talking about, I remember when I think about in Southern when they say, oh, bless his heart. You know, and to me, it's kind of like a bless his heart is really a nice way to say, I don't like that at all, sometimes at least. So instead of showing up and allowing and being honest and working things through, and of course, learning about what it means to be human, we instead try to shape it and control it to feel loving. That's that effort I'm talking about. And you set it up without realizing it. So you act in ways that you feel measure up to being someone you can love. You see, that's working behind the scenes all the time. So when we go inside, that's what we're looking for. We're looking to start to dismantle and break up this stuff that we're doing to try to be loving, to try to get loved, because we take the case that we're love already. You know, trying often causes love to be contrived, and it ends up having the weight of our expectations loaded on top of it. So if we can allow our sense of being in life to include this idea that love is supporting all life, then we can start to see behaviors as places for dialogue and relationship learning and agreement making and vulnerability sharing. So to be wholly aligned and fully express ourselves as love, we have to embrace all slices and the slivers of being human. I know it's confusing. If we're love, why do we have to embrace parts of our human self that clearly do not look like love? They're like jealousy and resentment and dominance and insensitivity, right? But if we are love, all of those qualities are love too. We get to remove the judgment, the value-based perspective off of it, and accept the whole thing. It's kind of like, imagine you're a rose bush, and that the root is the love I keep referring to, and you are love because you're you, and you're breathing, and every thorn, and every petal, and every leaf is part of that rose bush. No one part is more essential than another. But when we're in hot pursuit of feeling loving, we only want the beauty of the rose itself, not the entire structure that allows for the rose to bloom. The self, it needs wholeness to create this pathway for our expression. And this wholeness means that you walking in love and knowing that you are love, it means everything that emanates from you is love, and all the rest of it is practice. All the rest of it is relationship. All the rest of it is connection. These aspects of being human, they remain obstacles unless they're embraced and included and ultimately owned without reservation. And when that all happens and you're working from that vantage point, self-love begins to ratchet up because it emerges from this open root that you're starting to clear the way for. Okay, I want to take a breath here. So I'm throwing really quite a lot at you as we keep talking about this. Remember, you can call in. I'd love to hear from you about how this is hitting you or your own journey around love. So basically, we become more responsible for being love when we don't shy away from these unacceptable ways of being. Shameful, unacceptable, unworthy, they're all generally seen as being like void of love, like love is missing. But the idea of love means total appreciation of all things human, even those types of experiences. So the demands of life and the processing of all that comprises the systems of being a person, it creates the image of a playground for us to develop. Think of it this way. How could it possibly make sense that we would assess ourselves shamefully when the exercises and the play and the activity are actually designed to provide us practice for our human selves? And we can't provide a space for others to experiment and participate freely when this is missing for us in our own personal adventure. So this refocus our sense of what the end game of life, from assessing all the outcomes to instead acknowledging fully that the activity that we engage in is the key to freeing us up to love when we might actually otherwise feel unacceptable. So perhaps you've become hurt or angry or afraid in your life. I'm thinking we've all had that happen, right? These crevices, they harbor loss in the heart, and they can cause us to withhold from engaging fully with others. We actually leave situations when we're hurt, angry, and afraid. And I often think that we don't consider that that was love, right? Otherwise, why would you feel hurt, angry, or afraid? But it sneaks up on us because we don't realize how hurt or anger or fear, when it's left unattended, it's accepted as though, oh, that was an unloving moment, how it will seep into our heart and it stays there. And it just doesn't move. And it leaves us with less desire and capacity to connect with others. And again, we wrote it off because of an unloving moment or because it didn't feel good to us. See, it sneaks up on us because we're often speeding through difficult feelings, trying to rapidly reach the moment when they just won't feel bad. But in this intense race to avoid getting trapped in these feelings, we send a message to the self that it's unwanted in the moments of difficulty and emotional discomfort. We kind of teach the self to avoid itself, literally. And the minute we set this cycle in motion unwatched, the crevices, which previously had like awesome life force flowing through them, are now left to harden and calcify. It's as if we stopped the blood flow from a limb running from the pain, only to find that the minute the blood flow ceased, we destined that limb to be unusable. We no longer have access to our hearts, the willingness to risk, to share vulnerability, and seek new relationship because we have vacated that corner of the heart and we didn't realize it. What I'm saying here is that when you base your idea of love on whether or not things feel loving, you are creating a place where you back away from looking at life through the lens of all of it is love. What can I see here? What can I learn about this? What can I understand about how I show up in relationship and how they show up? This is super important because if you don't remember that the idea of love is implanted in your DNA, then you're going through life thinking love is a feeling instead of an expression of each and every part of you. And then you're allowing those moments to determine how much of your heart will remain accessible. And most of this is unconscious. You know, I'm not sure whether you're able to connect with this for yourself, but I definitely think you've probably seen this happen with other people, where they started to take actions and made choices and decisions based on not experiencing something as loving. And in actuality, there was all this opportunity and possibility that was there for them. So, okay, we've got a caller. It looks like Diane. Would love to have you come on and tell us what you think about love.
Well, you know, I think this is a very interesting but difficult subject to think about and talk about. And as I was listening to you, I immediately went to my own family, especially my mother and my two brothers, and I think what I experienced, even though you kind of take for granted that you're part of the family and you are loved, I didn't hear it very much that they love me, and my brothers would. I'm not going to say play pranks, but they would say something that started to sound loving, and then it was kind of like a gotcha moment. and it was never talked about it, but it really hurt my feelings. And so I am really timid about even saying the word. I really do have to feel it, because it feels so important to me that it really is a feeling that it has to be genuine. Mm-hmm. And I have run into friends along my life's pathway that has duplicated what I felt when I was a kid growing up.
Mm-hmm. Well, gosh, first of all, let me say thank you for sharing about your family and your life. The detail that you shared suggests that you do a lot of thinking about this. So what you're actually saying in some ways is different than is kind of a twist on what I'm saying, because you're saying I actually don't count love unless I can feel it in my belly, and that's the only place I'll speak it from. So that does fit where I'm saying most of us think of love as a feeling. Mm-hmm. The idea, though, would be if you take the case that you are love, you are the state of love, then saying I love you or sharing those words would be coming out of the expression of almost like your breath, or your, like it's like walking across the floor and hugging someone. Mm-hmm. Can you see what I'm saying?
Yes, I think I am somewhat guarded, because when I say I love somebody, I truly do.
You really feel it.
Pardon me?
You really feel it.
I really feel like I do, and I would never say that I love somebody and just off the cuff say it. I mean, I really mean it, and I think part of it is because I got mixed messages way back when, and I know I struggle with that. I have friends that off the cuff will say, I love you," and it's an important word to me, you know. So I was just sharing.
Well, I wanted to say right in there, that's, you know, when you said, I think I'm guarded, really what I'm trying to describe is the layer under that. If you really got yourself as love, then your guarding is what you actually begin to break down. So that's really where you're working from. So the experience you're describing is awesome conscious process that you're aware of and you're working with. This conversation I'm trying to kind of seed for everyone is this idea that when you walk in love, now you start to look at it from underneath it. Inside yourself, like underneath the guardedness, underneath the idea of it having feeling. Does that make sense?
Well, if I am going to walk in love and work on being guarded,
unguarded.
I would. Pardon me?
Unguarded.
I think
unguarded.
I would feel vulnerable.
Exactly. That's it. That's what we want.
Okay.
You work your way right through it. That's exactly the idea, is that then we can begin to walk deeper in ourselves and be vulnerable as human beings, because we don't actually have the guarding on top of that. You got it.
Okay. Well, then if I got it, I'll hang up.
Well, I really appreciate you sharing your thoughts and your feelings and being willing to explore it with me.
Thank you for taking the time to talk to me.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
So, okay. It's so interesting that Diane, I appreciate she calls in often, was speaking right at the point where I was going to say that it's easy to forget we're love when we do not actually feel loved. And really, if you think about all the things we just talked about, she really was able to describe it in her own words from her own lifetime. Because while we're running from uncomfortable feelings, we're actually looking for feelings of love. And this is a totally incongruent kind of equation. We as humans see love as a feeling, but fail to recognize that the state of all feeling is absolutely essential. So that's the part, right? We're running to get loved. We're trying to be loving. But what's underneath it is that we're really actually cutting out some of the feelings. And we're living on top of it rather than taking the case that we are love. So to connect to the universal idea that love is present because we exist exactly as we are, we have to begin to take the case that love will be discovered through all feeling, not only in feelings we determine are love. See, we label moments as loving and then go towards them, only to discover months later that the loving moments have been potentially replaced by some feeling entirely different. By not valuing feelings of all kinds, we're creating a smaller and smaller container to hold loving feelings, and without realizing it, strictly because of how we relate to the idea that some feelings are loving and others are not, we limit more and more with each passing year our capacity to allow and experience the love that is actually surrounding us. Okay, when we come back, we're going to talk some more about what it means to walk in love. And I hope you will consider calling in at 202-570-7057.
The best of holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free. AscendingHearts.com.
Imagine yourself being transported to India, to the banks of the Ganga and an ashram in Rishikesh. Visualize that you are welcome to satsang with an American sannyasi who shares the wisdom of her guru. Your visualization has manifested. Join Sattvi Bhagawati Saraswati for inspiration and transformation every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio.
If I could be you,
and you could be me,
for just 1 hour.
If you could find a way
to get inside
each other's mind.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
We've all felt left out. And for some, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Well, you're back listening to Expedition Self. I'm Sam Parrotto, and we are talking about love, or the idea of love today, and separating it from this idea that we have to feel love for it to count. So, to walk in love is to know unequivocally that our presence is sacred and important. This is how we know we're connecting to love as being. We feel as if our presence, whether feeling successful or not, is of value. We appreciate our effort to brave the unknown and fumble for what we cannot see. We accept ourselves for exactly where we are without turning on ourselves. This acknowledgement of our life journey, it helps us to maximize the small moments as essential learning experiences. Not to just go for the end game, like did you win or did you make it where you thought you were going to make it. We see these moments as sacred because they give us insight and understanding about being human, which is the whole point of being here, right? Our character is built as we persevere in the face of not knowing. Because when we come from love, it's an expression. There's all the thinking, all the strategizing, all the coordinating. That's not what's going on. You're actually walking in a space that every out-breath and every in-breath is just an exchange of learning. This kind of knowing and affirming ourselves, it fortifies us. I think it can, to face life's journey with, right, like the courage and determination and hope, right? Because you give yourself the benefit of the doubt. You stand for yourself as whole and mattering and important. And of course, when you do that, we do it for others. So we create a much different environment for people to operate in that's not being hinged on whether someone's acting loving or being perceived as loving, or whether we're doing the same. You know, I think we have to defend this knowing, like fiercely, because when we forget, which we do often, life absolutely provides another provocative opportunity to rise up and challenge us to look deeper than just whether something meets our feeling needs. You know, I see it as wanting to remind us of our knowing when these things happen, to teach us of this knowing. You see, if we're supposed to get that we are love, then much of our growth would come, I really want to slow down here, from the gap that exists between this knowing that we are sacred and important and love, and the places where we are in pursuit of finding it outside of ourselves. So the bottom line, if you hold yourself and others as love, your entire life and the events that happen will take on a new importance and a meaning for you. You will look at them through the lens of, what did I miss? What could I have brought? What was really happening for me or for that person? Where was I vulnerable? What were the real experiences that I've never put words on? So what does it mean to defend this knowing? Like, why would I use a word like that? Part of it is, I think we defend against ourselves. Because the minute the mind senses a threat or a loss, it jumps to protect, and it'll try to avoid any similar outcome in the future. The mind generally doesn't come from love. It comes from control and management and organization and categorization, labeling, right? It's a judger, right? That's what the mind wants. It works to win and to make sure it stays on top and it maintains power and to fight off the enemy. So if we don't remind ourselves that we're love, when reality descends like on our day, we're going to succumb to our need to survive, oftentimes at any cost and oftentimes unconsciously. So in the forgetting and remembering, our beliefs, they melt or break down and they have a chance to be reconstructed. And, you know, that to me is what transformation is. And that's really when we can transform some belief or some preconceived notion we've held and have it break down right in front of us and have us rethink how life goes or how we're going to operate in life. We are living exactly the growth experience that's really divinely ours. You know, given that our sacred presence is clear about being love and its purpose, I think the agreement between life and us is to serve up repeated opportunities to forget and remember, which will then bring us closer and closer to living from being love, because we just melt down those constructs, right? That framework, that scaffolding that we built, which has said, hey, this is love and this isn't. But here's the thing. It also provides the same risk of getting further from this truth, which largely depends on our capacity to handle this difficulty thrown at us by life and still be willing to feel and be willing to look and be willing to be vulnerable. So therefore, you know, our most determined self, it has to hold steady to the idea that we're love, you know, lest the self we identify with might rob us in its attempt to do its job, you know, of the true expansion and ultimate freedom and ability to recreate our future on any given day, right? From being who we are meant to be. So who are we meant to be? It's a kind of a difficult concept, right? Think of those parts that have appeared like throughout your life. You know, your intellectual ability is only one aspect of what makes you you. So cultivating a never-ending, infinite interest in understanding yourself better and wanting freedom to express yourself rather than attach yourself to another to meet your needs, and being willing to see who you are not through that process guarantees the seeing more of you and the being more of you. This is that part where I keep talking about, how do you go inside? You go inside by looking, claiming, connecting with, relating with it, and then turning it to the side and looking at it from a different angle. That's what we're doing today with love. You know, I'm all for romantic love and I'm all for loving, you know, my family members. But when it really comes to my development in life and how I show up consistently, bringing myself through that out-breath, really means that I've got to get underneath all of that kind of love, that feeling love. So it's unclear what circumstances will bring this moment of choice about, this moment when you say, hey, I'm going to look beyond my beliefs. I'm going to look beyond how I've concluded it should go. But from my experience and all the people I've ever met, there is a point when every one of us is faced, right, with this choice point to powerfully assert our presence of being love, our presence to stick with it when we would otherwise run, our willingness to show up in the face of feeling there's no love coming back to us. So whether it occurs in a harmonious or difficult circumstance, this knowing that we are love, even if we don't feel it, it then causes us to ask, well, what can I create here? What is there to be done? What am I to learn? I want something different. How can I make that happen? And this is where we land right into the possibility of our lives. Because instead of buying into that the feeling is going on, we bring an intention and a knowing and a remembering. Okay, hope you're staying with it. We're like plugging along here. We're moving through the conversation. So conflict and constraint and confusion between the story that is our life and the essence of who we are, which I'm saying is love, it absolutely prompts our human evolution. And when we evolve, we see the smallness of things and the meaningfulness of each and every and all and any circumstance. We are able to free ourselves from being attached to others' threads of unaware relationship, because we get that flashlight on ourselves because we remember where we're coming from. And our sense of independence brings about relationship with each and every person rather than separation. This is a really big thing, because I'm saying that when we use love inside of the feeling space, right, that I have to feel love for it to count, what that means then is that we separate every time we don't think we feel love, and so do others. See, every person has a line where they see themselves as different than someone else. That same line justifies treating and interacting one person with love and one with apathy. There's justification there. So on a human level, these distinctions between those we identify with and those people that we remain detached from are an indication of the depth with which we identify ourselves as love. Now, I'm hoping you kind of got that. I'm saying that who we identify with and who we don't identify with is a full reflection of how we identify ourselves as love. So people and human beings, they hurt others when they see separations without the wholeness, and that sense of connectivity exists when love is not negotiable, conditional, or tied to expectations. So we can free love from the confines of the human experience and still accept its work in the day-to-day interactions, even when it appears missing. So the separation idea is pretty important, and it requires time and patience and intention to start to play with, how do I take the case that I am love in this moment, or in this circumstance, or in these situations. So as we pursue the fullest expression of love in our life, A lot of times we're surprised to find that what we thought was love is not. Right? Love lives inside of relationships, even those that are unfulfilling. Love is present in loss and disappointment and tragedy. It can be seen through hard work and exhaustion and burden, right? But we're going to continue to be shown the way to ourselves as we engage in life, because with each wave of life experience, we return to the place where we began, which is at some level, even without taking the case that you are love, we're always rethinking our original understanding of love. Remember when I started and I said, we're in this overarching study about love, all of us. No one is accepted. No one is excluded from that. So really the question is, how can you bring more consciousness to your study of love? See, our innate wisdom, it's accessed and revealed to us. It brings us closer to the acknowledgement, one moment at a time, that we're love. So sometimes we don't gain this wisdom, right? Instead, we see our lessons as strategies to avoid getting hurt, ways to be defended. And when we seize upon these strategies, we can move further from the truth and away from the idea that we're love. And that goes one step further, because we can say if we don't feel love, we also even might conclude that it doesn't exist. So I said earlier, hurt and pain and suffering and sadness are as much a part of love expressed through us as joy, delight, satisfaction, and wonder. What might be the purpose of these experiences for one who knows but forgets that they walk in love? Lessons? Opportunities for the mind to reconsider its conclusions? To discover our limitations and unfinished life experiences? And maybe they're designed to push us to give into relationship without judgment and to cultivate a willingness to experience each minute with awe and wonder and curiosity. So settling more deeply into the knowledge that we are love simply because we breathe, we can then assume that others walk knowingly in love as well. So when actions don't present themselves as loving, we can remember how love is often hidden inside of our need to define its origin improperly or inaccurately. Why is there a difference between how one loves and how it feels to others? So conversation becomes the ultimate tool for creating intimacy and revealing this undistinguished love. Indistinguished, is that the right word? Love at work, right? Listening and sharing helps us to discern that which feels like love and that which does not. This is the purest moment of relationship in the creating of this, where you share, that didn't feel like love. Well, that did. Well, why was that? See, this is that moment when we can dive deeply into that chasm of possibility and mystery with another person. So we have to take the case. We want to give the benefit of the doubt that another is always seeking to express themselves as love, even when it doesn't appear so. So, we humans, we're not so resilient. I mean, we get through and we survive, but that heart is often battered and it shrinks from those unworked events. So it's so important to remember that all people are actually expressing something to try to get to that love. The creative possibility in any relationship is at the greatest risk and simultaneously has the most to gain when we have lost connections to ourselves as love. And so we know that defenses and self-protection, while keeping us safe, they also block our capacity to share love. And the more we operate from that shadowed state, the more we're likely to provoke others to hide as well. The process of peeling and discarding self-defense requires a new way of thinking. And that's the point of knowing that we're love. So as we remember that we are love, we courageously begin to create opportunities to feel all of life's offerings and willingly stand vulnerable and exposed. So to be in the fullest expression of ourselves is to remember that we are love, but we may not be loving. And as the building blocks are put in place, we see that to be human is no easy task. So In conclusion, the greatest gift we can give when we walk as love is to truly see ourselves and others in a human and vulnerable and seeking way. I have a poem for us for today, and I want to say thank you for sharing in this conversation about love. I had lots more that I could have talked about, but I feel like this is a good start for us. The idea that we can live with this as a baseline for ourselves is really a way to start looking at life through a lens of more possibility and more opportunity for growth. So this poem is by Rupi Kaur. Kaur. It's Kaur. Most importantly, love, like it's the only thing you know how. At the end of the day, all this means nothing. This page, where you're sitting, your degree, your job, the money, nothing even matters except love and human connection. Who you loved and how deeply you loved them, how you touched the people around you, and how much you gave them. I thought it really fit that because at the end of the day, when we walk in love, we really learn that loving deeply is something that comes easily and freely and with the breath. Thank you so much and have an awesome week. And I look forward to seeing you next week on Expedition Self.